Broadcasting live from a waterbed, this is Pop Culture Reference, your one-stop reference for all things pop culture. I'm one of your hosts, Seamus Connolly.
And I'm your other host, Garrett Strother.
This week, in a follow-up from our last week's episode where we covered The Conjuring 1 and 2, we're tackling the brand new The Conjuring The Devil Made Me Do It, which just came out this morning as of the date of recording.
Yeah, on HBOMax and in theaters, and disappointingly it came out at 2 a.m. here in Central Time, so I couldn't stay up at night to watch it.
I checked at midnight to see if it had come through, but like you said, a little disappointing.
I'm excited to talk about it with you, but first up we've got some news to cover.
Up top for news, Taylor Swift is joining the new David O. Russell film, and she's being added to a cast that is just already very stacked, so this is interesting news.
David O. Russell films, I feel like of late, have been definitely Oscar vehicles, and he tends to work with a lot of the same people, namely Christian Bale is a big collaborator with him, and I think like Timothy Olyphant's also in this movie, which is, you know, always a treat. But David O. Russell is a pretty bad dude, and I don't know why in the era of accountability that we're currently living in holding people to standards in Hollywood, why he hasn't kind of been, for lack of a better term, canceled.
I know like all of his movies that have been coming out the last decade, but I don't know enough about this controversy about him, I guess.
The thing that I've always gone back to that I heard about a long time ago was George Clooney was in one of O. Russell's earlier films, Three Kings, and said it was the worst experience he'd ever had in his entire life making a movie, and that David O. Russell would yell at every single person on the crew and physically assaulted George Clooney once when he tried to stick up for the crew.
Oh, what the hell? That is terrible.
I did a little bit more research on it before going into this episode because I knew we'd be talking about him, and I guess has a pretty standard track record. Like, it wasn't just some young director not knowing how to direct and yelling at people, but that's still how he behaves on set, to the point that when they were making American Hustle, he made Amy Adams cry on set literally every single day, and at one point Christian Bale had to tell him to leave because he was getting too intense.
Oh my god, that is horrible. Taylor just got done with terrible people in the entertainment industry, and she's just kind of joining another notorious D-bag, huh? Like you said, in this era of accountability, that his last 3 or 4 movies have been Oscar contenders in their own various ways, and I would like to not have this man be so prolific in the film industry, if I'm being honest. Maybe a little more exposure of his bad behavior will help out, but apparently there has been plenty of exposure, so I don't know.
But yeah, Taylor Swift's back acting, I guess. Cats and this.
Oh yeah, I was about to say, wasn't she in something recently? But I have not run the gamut of watching the new Cats, so that's a blacked out part of my film release memory.
Next up, we've got more casting news, which is Donnie Yen, famed Chinese action star, has joined the cast of John Wick Chapter 4, a movie I didn't know was in production.
I think I heard that John Wick 4 was going forward, but I mean, I loved John Wick. I didn't see the sequels, even though I heard they were very fun. I think Donnie Yen is absolutely golden on screen. I think any movie that I've seen him in, the Ip Man franchise, his spot in Rogue One, especially when he's gonna be matching his absolutely fierce handwork with Keanu Reeves' absolutely crisp gun work in the John Wick movies. I think regardless of if he's going to be maybe on his team or if he's going to maybe be the bad guy, which might be fun, I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think he's a perfect fit tonally for this series, and also there's so much tactical precision that's a part of the John Wick action that Donnie Yen seems like a no-brainer to bring into that universe.
The man doesn't skip a beat in terms of his physicality. I actually don't know how old he is, but I know he's getting up there in age, but he is still sharp as ever, so it's going to be very cool.
Absolutely. And our last bit of casting news is that Issa Rae has joined Into the Spider-Verse 2 as Spider-Woman.
I've been itching for more Spider-Verse since the first one came out, and I think the implications of Spider-Woman versus like Spider-Gwen, I guess, is a very interesting thing to think about. How they're just gonna absolutely blow up and expand the possibilities of what a Spider-Verse could be. I think that's gonna be very cool.
Issa Rae's a good fit, especially in that first movie. Even the more serious roles are mostly comedians, like Catherine Hahn as Doc Ock.
Yeah.
So I think this is really good casting, and I'm excited to hear more Spider-Verse casting hopefully coming up soon.
Yeah, I have a feeling that we're going to be going to the old podcasting call soon for this one. I think with the success of that first Spider-Verse, they're going to triple down on everything they're bringing to this next one, including how they're going to expand out that cast. And next up in news, Mission Impossible 7 has shut down production because of a positive COVID test. I'm hoping that it is Tom Cruise because that would be the funniest. I mean, that's obviously horrible and I don't want that to happen. But after his big blow up, I think that the absolute irony of it would be delicious. I obviously don't think it actually is him because he is, as we've talked about before, an absolute robot man. And he's been, I'm sure, isolating himself so successfully because of him trying to avoid this exact situation. But I don't know, I guess it kind of seemed inevitable. We'll see how long this lasts. I'm hoping that, maybe it was more of an isolated thing and it didn't spread too much and they can resume again soon.
I'm so excited for it, Seamus.
Honestly, I am too. From the small stuff that I've seen, like you said, him on a train, like, I'm in for it. It's just fun action, so.
For our last bit of news, we have the new Billie Eilish single, Lost Cause, and its music video, which dropped earlier this week.
Which is an official bop, I think. It's a good song. It's
really good.
It's a good song. And the video, made me smile just because it seems like they were just having so much actual fun, shooting that video together.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I've got more to say about the video than I do about the song, because the song is just a very good breakup song.
Yeah.
A lot of the tone of, No Time to Die with more Billie Eilish in it than No Time to Die has.
Sure, yeah, I know what you mean. What are your thoughts on the video, man? I want to know.
So, Seamus, I know we've talked about a couple of Billie Eilish music videos on the show before, but I don't know how many you've seen.
I've seen that last one we discussed, where she's on a mountain with a snake. I've seen this one, which I enjoyed a lot. I saw the spider one, which was lovely, and I had to really look pretty closely to figure out the legitimacy of the spiders. I'm trying to think, is there one where she's just got black slime coming out of her mouth and or face? I've seen that one too. That's pretty wicked.
What I'm getting at with that is this is unlike any other Billie Eilish music video in terms of its tone and the fact that there's no crazy surrealist imagery.
Yeah.
It's borrowing a lot of its visual language, honestly, from rap videos, because you have a lot of wide-angle lenses getting really close up in the camera's face, scantily clad women running around a big Beverly Hills mansion.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong, but then it's undercut by slumber party imagery, and it turns it into a way more wholesome idea of that kind of video shoot, along with the lyrics and theming of like you said, kind of just being a very good breakup song, and then pairing that with the imagery of being with your actual friends and feeling good and moving away from it instead of wallowing in it. It's interesting.
But just like everything else that's kind of been coming out with this happier than ever, all the singles and the Vogue photo shoot and all that stuff, it feels like simultaneously, Billie Eilish's spin on whatever, but also a inherent commentary on male gaze, which I know we talked about at length the last time we discussed Billie Eilish.
Yes. Some of the shots are a little more risque in this video than like you said, kind of ever before. She's been more focused on those surrealist images, but I mean, it seems like she's kind of emerging from that a little bit, ditching the more baggy clothes. I know was her whole image for the longest time, and
Also, Annie wanted me to mention when we were talking about this earlier that the boy that the album's about that she broke up with that was like not good to her was a rapper. So using that rap
Oh.
imagery also I think has a little bit more to it than just like rap is usually the music video genre where you see the most male gazy imagery already. You mentioned Slumber Party being wholesome, but I think there's also definitely the idea of like the cliche of the high school movie where all the girls are having like a sexy slumber party
Yeah,
with pillow
yeah.
fights and all that. And this music video leaning into that idea of like the girls are twerking and wearing revealing clothes.
Yeah, very true. But then, it's also like all kind of beige clothing and eating potato chips and playing Xbox and like kind of cooling out too. It's an interesting dichotomy, truly.
This is one that we're definitely going to be watching closely as she releases new singles and as that album gets closer to release.
I'm really looking forward to it when it finally fully drops. Like we've been saying, these singles, these videos are like very pointed in what they're trying to say, and I think it's just really good.
But with that, Seamus, should we move on to The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It?
I am hyped, Garrett. Let's do it. This week for our main segment, as we've been building up for the last couple weeks, we're doing The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. It's the third in a trilogy of main Conjuring films. You can see this one on HBOMax, and I'm ready to kind of jump into it, Garrett. What were your thoughts on this new one?
First off, we mentioned this earlier, I was kind of impressed with how much of the stuff that we were hoping to see from our conversation last week ended up being true for this film.
Yeah, we definitely sniped a couple of those details.
However, I do think that you can definitely tell that this movie is not directed by James Wan and not written by I believe it's the Hayes brothers that wrote on the first two films. One of the writers from Conjuring 2 did come back, but largely this is, from a creative team standpoint, a new set of folks working on it. And I know James Wan was technically he had a story by credit or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely do think that this film, it just feels inconsistent and less scary and tonally just kind of odd.
I was gonna say, like, could you really tell the directorial and writer changes because of the lack of scariness in this third one? Because I definitely felt that shift away from the horror that is so effective in those first two movies.
And I don't necessarily mind the fact that it's not as scary, but it just felt weird and disconnected to me.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree on that. That being said, I genuinely liked it. I don't think it was a bad film. I'd probably watch it again. I think maybe I'd watch the other two before I'd see this third one again. But like you said, the kind of shift from not being as scary or horror forward as the other two still doesn't hinder it too much as like a crime mystery that we were teeing up with our guesses.
I'm thrilled about that. Like, that is a direction that I'm super glad they went in because it made me feel a little bit more invested in how Ed and Lorraine were going to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
However, I felt like in this film I was less invested in the characters that were being affected at the same time. Because this is something we'll talk about more in spoilers, but I just feel like giving so much more time to Ed and Lorraine, which is great because that's a trend that they've been doing throughout the three movies. They had to cut a lot of the time you would normally have been spent with the characters being affected by the haunting.
Yeah, this one, it starts off really compelling, and we'll get into it more in spoilers, like you said before. Like, I thought the dynamic of the family in the case for this one was very interesting, especially with the action that it starts off with. I thought it was kind of just going to escalate a lot from there, but more than any of the other ones, this is the Warrens movie for sure.
I would say that it has horror sections, like almost like a Spielberg movie where Spielberg will pepper in, oh, here's going to be a scary part of my movie.
Yeah, I think so. I thought this was going to feel more like a finale, but they left it about as eligible for more movies as any of the other ones, so this might not even be the last of the old Conjurings, I think.
I would love to see more of these. And again, we'll talk in spoilers about, I mean, we talked at length about it last week too, about the way that the Warrens are portrayed in these movies and how you have to suspend your relationship with like the based on the true story elements a little bit for these, of course.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think this is the biggest one of those because obviously they changed the way, you know, the cases allegedly went in the first two movies and abbreviated time and stuff like that. But in this movie, I would say 50% of the actual ghost stuff at least is just straight up, like completely made up, has no basis in what actually happened.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, that's like you said. This one, out of any of them, you really just kind of have to go into it with no, like, don't even read the based on a true story in the freeze frame opening of this movie. Just brush past it.
I think we have to kind of wrap up and go into spoilers now if we wanna talk anymore. To be honest.
Yeah, like we said, this is very much a mystery, so like we can't reveal too much without going in. So why don't we cross the threshold of spoilers and really get into it?
You just mentioned the Conjuring freeze frame opening, the staple, where the yellow 70s text comes up over the whatever character. Usually it happens on a note of discord. Usually it happens when something really scary has just happened and it makes it really clear how much Ed and Lorraine are needed there. But in this one, it subverts that by freeze framing after one problem has been resolved, but giving you the inkling of what the next problem will be.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a really clean way to tee up the exact setting that you need to swiftly go into the story they're actually trying to tell. Especially,
are they trying to tell it though, Seamus? That's the question that I've got for this movie.
That is the question, isn't it? They really grabbed me with the visceral crunching bonitis that little boy has in the beginning exorcism.
It is the dweeby one from WandaVision, right?
Okay, is that why I remembered his teeth? Is that who that is?
I think it's one of the twins from WandaVision,
Not the Quicksilver twin, it's the other one.
The other one, the magic one.
Pretty great. That was like the classic, just like twisting body exorcism that I always get all shivery with when I see that on screen, and I like that a lot.
The little actor did a great job. They had some really on the nose visual homages to The Exorcist.
Yeah, I laughed out loud when I saw the old priest friend coming through with that, like, he kind of like shakes off his jitters as he walks up. Is that like not exactly what happens in The Exorcist?
It's literally exactly The Exorcist shot. I think it's cute, but I do think it, for the fact that sequence already wasn't really scaring me that much, is definitely like, oh yeah, okay, we're in cute pastiche land, not I'm horrified by the clapping in the basement Conjuring stuff.
Yeah. Oh, man. I thought once the curse was passed on to the older brother, and there's that scene of him when he actually commits the murder on their landlord, I thought that was incredibly well done. Just the way that they were kind of ramping up his uncomfortable feelings and just like turning up the orange haze filter ever so slightly as he was getting more and more freaked out. And I thought that was an incredibly effective way to like actually get to where we kind of both knew it was going with that D-bag of a landlord.
Yeah, with the landlord, it was really weird to me because I think this is the time to talk about the fact that this is the one where it's the weirdest for it to be a true story, because it's a true story of an actual guy that actually murdered somebody. It's not just like a haunted house movie. It's like, no, a guy died. The fact that this is so rooted in reality makes the fact that they make the landlord such a scumbag really rub me the wrong way.
I didn't even really think about that. That guy probably wasn't as much of a bastard as he was portrayed as in real life. I mean, I guess I didn't look too far into this specific one of their cases after this, but like you said, it seems like kind of in poor taste that they didn't give that character based on a real person as much of a chance to be empathetic.
I did some research, and apparently the actual murder is pretty close to what was depicted, that they'd both been drinking and that the landlord grabbed the girlfriend and like wouldn't let go.
Oh.
Now I couldn't find out if that was like as in like a funny way or like whatever.
Like Maybe it could have been them just dancing and screwing around, or it could have been more malicious or something.
Yeah. And then Arnie Johnson stabbed the guy. He stabbed his landlord.
Was it actually 22 times? That's pretty brutal.
I couldn't find it. It didn't sound like it though. It sounds like that was exaggerated. It sounds like it was like a few times.
Because that was kind of an important part when they were like trying to connect it to the other murder that they investigate briefly with the girls and...
From what I can tell is completely fabricated.
Oh.
As well as everything to do with the witch and her father and like the disgraced priest and all that.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about how it's just a witch's curse again. They're going really back to the roots of this franchise.
Let's talk about the fact that they largely abandoned the haunted house formula from the first two films.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of a welcome thing for me. I was hoping it was going to be more of a mystery, and that's the way to do it. And you still do get a little bit of the pleasures of that haunted house film when they have the flashback to the boy and the waterbed.
Yeah, definitely.
Which, that and the exorcism scene at the beginning, I would say are the two scariest sequences in this film.
Yeah, that waterbed one really did get me. I knew it was coming, but it's still incredibly effective with the eeriness of like him mirroring the boy's hand as he's like waving it across. I thought that was wonderful.
And the idea of like there could be something in a waterbed. You know?
Yeah, you don't know, the murky sea waterbed or something. Can't look too far into it. Bodies hiding in there.
But most of the film is not spent on the actual murder that this film, in its title, purports to be about. Like, they changed the naming convention to more closely associate it with that famous Devil Made Me Do It trial.
Yeah.
And then they show only in the last 3 or 4 minutes the actual trial, and barely focus on the actual murder at all. There's the exorcism at the beginning, they investigate that for a little bit, but then mostly they go off and they explore all this fake stuff.
And I could almost say that it would be worth it if maybe that excommunicated priest was like more involved and that it was like a bigger twist when they wanted us to feel that twist at the reveal of like who he is to the witch, but they don't focus on him enough, and then they don't focus on the legal aspect of it enough. And like you said, they kind of just go run off, have Lorraine do another vision sequence where she like can't control herself. And even that cop guy could have been like a way to make the legal aspect of it be more legitimate if he like joined them more. But nah, they like go half measures on a lot of the stuff that would have made it really, really good.
There's 2 different movies in here that it can't decide what it wants to be, so it's just neither of them, and it feels like its attention is diverted and diluted.
And that's a shame, because I really like the performance of that creepy old ex-priest guy whose name I can't remember, but he's in stuff, right? He is super familiar looking.
Yeah, I know his name, and it's John Noble.
He is in things, right? What is he in?
He's Lord of the Rings.
Oh, that's definitely probably where I know him from.
Yeah. And he's also, I think, Scarecrow in the Arkham games.
Oh, that's cool. Right on. Yeah, he was fantastic in this movie. He was just like the perfect amount of creepy and like a little endearing when you hear his story about like, you know, raising this witch girl. And I wish he got a shot off with that gun. He got sliced pretty swiftly.
It just doesn't have the emotional resonance that scene is clearly supposed to have. Of like, God, don't let me fail now and let me redeem myself and all this stuff. And he just dies. It doesn't even feel tragic. It just feels like, oh, there's that character that was in 2 scenes. He's dead now.
Yeah, there could have been a little bit of a emotional showdown with his evil daughter. Even the surprise of getting hit from the back with that, you know, blade across the throat would have been a lot more impactful if there was a bit of dialogue between them to build up that it's like maybe her in front of him actually instead of the immediate fake out to death, you know?
Yes. That's the thing that I keep coming back to with this film, is that obviously so much of it is fabricated because they were trying to walk a line where obviously there are higher stakes with a real-life murder investigation and a real-life murder trial that they were trying probably to avoid, I'm guessing.
Probably something there about keeping it not as true as it could be.
Especially considering the fact that these movies have already been sued multiple times, I think, by people that were affected by the cases in the first 2 movies.
So yeah, they were probably just trying to skirt that all together.
But then, why not just tell a different story? That's the other thing, is that part of the reason this movie's not very scary, is because it feels so over the top and so heightened compared to the other two that I know it's fake. That so many people are dying, that the fact that he dies and the witch dies, and they go all Jack Torrance with Ed at the end.
Which I even thought that was a fun idea if they played maybe with that a little more, a little differently. But again, seems like an idea that gets thrown on screen pretty swiftly and then dropped just as swiftly, you know?
There are a lot of good ideas in this film that didn't all connect in the way that they clearly wanted them to. I would say it's definitely the weakest entry in the Conjuring franchise, but at the same time, I'm glad it tried something new. I'm glad it leaned into the mystery element, because that's something that I wanted it to do. I just wish it were scarier.
Yeah, me too. I wish it was scarier, and like we've been saying, a little more cohesion between these, like, genuinely good ideas for a horror movie.
Oh, and the dead body thing. The whole scene in the morgue.
Yeah. Granted, that big dead body zombie puppet guy was pretty freaky when he started charging at him. Like, I'll give him that, but
that sequence is actually pretty tense, but it just, again, it feels so over the top that the witch is literally reanimating this dead body that it just doesn't feel, it loses me. It feels like Ghostbusters or something.
At that point, I was like, oh, they're gonna do a thing where they're gonna catch the Warrens who have, like, seemingly broken and entered into this. Well, I guess that's what they actually do.
Oh, they literally
break and enter into the morgue. But, like, they're going to do a thing where they're going to throw out a bunch of evidence because of whatever, how it was gathered, and it's going to make it a lot harder for the Warrens to help this boy who's on trial, but they just kind of use it as a way to bring back that dead body later to again charge. Oh, I guess they use that in the Jack Torrance sequence too, but...
Oh, which also, in real life, they did not plead demonic possession in front of the jury.
Oh, what? I thought that was, like, going to be the whole thing.
No, they threw it out. The judge threw it out before the actual jury heard it, and that the lawyer's primary defense was self-defense. So that's part of the reason they didn't show so much of the court case, is because there wasn't actually that much demonic stuff in the actual court case. But once again, tell a different story. The Warrens have so many cases. Like, allegedly something like 10,000 cases they worked on over their, like, 60-year career.
And, like, with those numbers, they could base a movie off any of them and just write a good movie with an idea for a case. They could have done that with this movie, just made it about a demonic court case that didn't have to be tied up in as much of the true-to-life stuff as they got tangled in. That kind of made it feel a little disjointed.
But then the parts of this movie that they do make up don't feel like a Conjuring movie. They just feel like a generic horror movie. So nobody wins.
No, truly nobody wins. If they were going to go in the direction of, like, we're going to tweak these details to make it more exciting, they could have just rolled with that, but they tweaked it enough to make us want the exciting stuff and never quite achieve it.
I still like this movie. I really do. I know it sounds like we're kind of dunking on it, but it's just not as good as the other two is really the secret here.
That's pretty much it. Is, like, I liked this movie. I think it was effective in a lot of what it did, and I think we're kind of pulling it apart so much because there's all this potential that we see in what we got, and how if they are going to continue to make sequels, how they could expand and kind of perfect what they've got going on, or a lot of how this movie could have been handled just a bit differently. Like you said, overall, like, genuinely enjoyable. I liked the detective work that was in on all this. I love that our boy Drew makes a comeback for the third straight movie, and he's got a lot more to do every time he's in another movie, and he's really, like, a part of the squad this time, and I hope that if they make a fourth one, I hope he's, like, a full-fledged part of the Warren team that is, like, a little more active in the stuff.
It's Rick Moranis putting on that Ghostbuster jumpsuit. He's ready to fly.
Yes, they get Drew to perform one of the exorcisms or something. Let's get crazy with it.
I wonder if Drew's a real person. I'd love to know.
Well, that's my next Google search after we're out of here.
Oh, they had a nice callback to the parents from the first movie. I liked that. They sent them flowers after Ed's heart attack.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Ed's heart attack is another thing, though, where I feel like if they had tried to do a smaller stakes film, a film that was more in line with the realistic tone the first two movies had, that I would have felt a lot more tension for him. But in this movie, with how over the top all of the third act was, it just felt like a gimmick.
Did Ed Warren die of like heart complications inevitably. Like I feel like they were trying to tease out like, hey, the real couple that we base this on actually are dead currently. What if we're gonna be dramatizing their death? And I thought that was gonna be a really kind of messed up way to go about it, because they were really teasing those pills, you know?
I have no idea what Ed Warren actually died of. But I do like the idea that they do try to make them older in this film, because at this point we're 10 years after the first Conjuring movie starts, I think. I think that movie's in 1971 and this is 1981.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
So I like that they aged them up. It's hilarious that their daughter is just like forever a teenager.
Yeah, it's a little strange.
I think they implied that she was at college in this movie, though. So
you bet your ass I was scanning the background for Valak-style Easter eggs, and didn't find a one, weirdly enough. I think the motel that the Warrens are staying at is the first name of the guy who got murdered. It's the blank hotel, or the blank motel.
Interesting.
Which, like, that never really bared any significance later. I was like, oh, interesting. They're kind of bringing back the guy again, but, you know, that never really did anything. And they hid a little nun figurine in the bedroom of the young couple towards the beginning that I was like, oh, hey, there's a visual reference. That's fun.
Then we also, of course, have the nun painting at the end in their room of goodies.
Which, really surprised because of how they, like, really made a meal out of the shot in the second movie about putting the Crooked Man box next to the music box. And I was like, oh, they're gonna do another flash of that, or like the Annabelle case, but they don't even put the Annabelle case in focus in this movie. They mention Annabelle by name when they're scaring that lawyer into helping them, and then that's all we get. They really weren't trying to use those other movies as a crutch.
No, which I do admire that about these movies, is that they're kind of little Indiana Jonesy one-off adventures, but
yeah,
each movie you learn more about Ed and Lorraine. That being said, I did feel like the stories they told each in The Conjuring 2 about their like life together and everything was way more impactful than the like flashback sequence they had in this movie.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I thought they were gonna do more with that, kind of like how they did it with the talks in the second movie, kind of like making that a little more integrated into the actual situation at hand, but that really only comes back at the very end when he builds her a replica of the gazebo.
That's adorable. Like, I love that.
Again, this movie ending in like a happy marital bliss moment between the Warrens, which is nice and not expected for a movie like this.
Oh, they've got that Elvis joke, which I like.
Oh, yeah.
She says she met him once after he died, too, which I'm assuming means, like, she's referring to his Elvis impression in Conjuring 2.
That's what I was thinking, but also maybe she's just being cheeky. Maybe we gotta look up if the Warrens ever contacted Elvis in real life. The Conjuring 4, Elvis made me do it?
Hey.
I don't know if that would hold water at theaters.
Does your house smell like peanut butter and banana sandwiches?
Can you hear a in the night that you can't explain?
I think we're officially out of stuff to talk about, other than the fact that when the kid's in prison, they do a couple of sequences that aren't very scary.
Yeah.
Or at least super predictable.
Yeah, definitely. There's more bone cracking, bone-itis when he's in the bed and he like degloves his hand to get out of the cuffs, which is gross. Honestly, not even that worth talking about this weird suicide curse that this guy's going through, because it's kind of not that interesting. That's a bad priest who gave him glass on suicide watch. I mean, that's just dumb.
I do love the bad priest, though. I love that he's a bad priest, because he's it's gotta be intentional that he's a bad priest.
Yeah, he's just like a bumbling priest. He can't handle this like Ed Warren can, pulling out an exorcism out of nowhere.
Ed Warren didn't fix anything in this movie, which is lame.
Oh yeah, I guess he didn't. He used a sledgehammer to slam down on an altar. But honestly, yeah, that witch was kind of whack. It was weird to have a corporeal villain. That also took away a lot from me. But, you know, her demise was an interesting bonitis moment that I enjoyed as well.
What are they going to say to the police? The police aren't going to accept, oh yeah, the demon came and snapped all our bones.
Then again, like, lead them to the Satanist dungeon, and you're like, do you see all this? Like, we didn't put this here. This is an old witch tunnel.
I'm just saying, it's not a good look to be the only two people living at a multiple murder crime scene.
Yeah, very true, very true.
So yeah, this movie, I hope it does well enough for a fourth one, I guess is my only real thought.
Yeah, I'm in on that with you too. I think that we can have plenty more fun with the Warren angle. If you like the first two, just see this for fun. I mean, it's not like a must see or anything in general, but it's a decent continuation.
All right, let's move on to our pop culture reference, shall we, Seamus?
Let's do it. For this week's pop culture reference, we're going to be talking about the real-life Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were paranormal investigators and world-famous demonologists. They're featured as the main characters in the Conjuring films, and obviously we're talking about them today because we talked about the third and newest installment of the Conjuring franchise. Though Ed wasn't actually part of the church, he was incredibly knowledgeable about biblical theories and the inner workings of the church. But Lorraine was actually self-described as a clairvoyant and a medium that could speak to spirits and see the past and future. They were both active as demonologists in the second half of the 20th century, and they actually founded the New England Society for Psychic Research in 1952. They were most famous for creating a lot of the attention and draw to the Amityville hauntings in New York, which inspired dozens of books and films, including the intro of the second Conjuring film.
Yeah, they have a lot of really other famous cases too, a lot of which have been fictionalized since then. You've got the Annabelle doll, which is in real life a Raggedy Ann doll, but is a creepy, like, porcelain doll in the movies. She has her own trilogy of films spun off from the Conjuring universe. You've got the Enfield haunting, which is, like, one of the most famous hauntings ever. That was the subject of the second Conjuring movie. The Snedeker house haunting, which was the inspiration for the movie The Haunting in Connecticut. And, of course, the Arnie Cheyenne Johnson Devil Made Me Do It court case, which is what the third movie that we talked about today was trying to portray. They kept all of the artifacts from their cases, just like in the Conjuring films, at the Warren Occult Museum in their house, which has been closed since Lorraine Warren died in 2019.
Now, you can see this in all three of the Conjuring films, actually, but in real life, they never charged for their services. But many people, including a lot of the families who they worked with, accused the Warrens of exploiting them, the mentally ill, and manipulating scared and confused families for media attention. They were also accused of outright fabricating entire narratives for their books, but many skeptics admit that the Warrens were likely entirely genuine in their beliefs, and that predetermined conclusions based on their Catholic faith influenced their investigations.
Actually, I was doing some research on the movie today, Seamus, and apparently there was a older brother of the possessed kid at the beginning that isn't portrayed in the movie because he hated the Warrens and accused them of encouraging their family not to take their son to go see, like, medical professionals, mental health professionals, which is what they would have had to do to get a church-sanctioned exorcism, which they didn't actually have in real life, and he suspects they did that to avoid them diagnosing what he suspected was his younger brother's schizophrenia.
God, that is dark.
It's a very interesting thing about how, yeah, they weren't necessarily charging these people and exploiting money from them, but they were also exploiting potentially, conventionally solved medical problems and kind of spinning them to source books and media attention, and that's exactly what the older brother, not depicted in this film, asserts that they were doing. So that, I think that's just fascinating. The Warrens are really more famous than ever right now because of this huge blockbuster Conjuring cinematic universe that has, 8 or 9 films now, almost, I think?
Yeah, between all the spin-offs, it's like 8 or 9, yeah, it's a lot.
Because you've got the 3 Conjuring films, the 3 Annabelle films, The Nun, The Curse of La Llorona, which was also directed by Michael Chavez, who directed the movie today.
Oh, right on. Very nice. Keeping it in universe.
That is 8, right? Yeah, that's
I think
8.
so, yeah.
And then they've obviously got more on the way. I think there's a sequel to The Nun coming out. I think there's a Crooked Man movie coming out, maybe?
Oh, yeah, I think we heard rumors about that recently.
So we're going to be seeing more Warrens, definitely, and just in general, they're worth knowing about because they had a huge influence on the way media and pop culture kind of have a perception of the real life hauntings around the world in the last 70 years. Like, they've been working since the 50s.
Yeah, that influence is undeniable. Like, going back to the popularization of, like, the Amityville hauntings, that was, like, a massive explosion for, like, what we now know is modern horror storytelling on screen and through those novels that the family and them wrote. It's a long and complicated history with the Warrens, especially when you try to compare it with the legacy that is being built around the fictionalization of these real people. So, what does this influence you to think about these movies? Or does it influence you at all? Are you kind of keeping it a little more separated?
Let us know down below in the comments if you're on something with that, or tweet us. Let us know what you guys think about the relationship between the real life Warrens and these Conjuring movies. Is it all in good fun?
With that, what do you say we kick it on over to the rec center?
Let's do it, Seamus. Now it's time to save the rec center, where we give you our weekly recommendations. Seamus, you got one up top?
In my most current MCU rewatch, I am back with another maybe unpopular opinion about one of the lesser celebrated Marvel films. Everybody should go and rewatch Age of Ultron. And that's my stamp of approval, man. That movie's good. People need to stop being so mean to the Hulk and Age of Ultron. They're good movies.
I think with me, Age of Ultron just represents the stuff that I like the least about the MCU at its peak. Self-referential, needlessly world-building, setting up stuff that's taking itself simultaneously super seriously and not seriously enough. There's quips in all the wrong places, and Thor has to go off and have his cave visions that are super self-serious, and the whole Ultron's building a vibranium body that Iron Man has made the brains for, but then Thor gives it life by striking lightning into it. Just get out of here. It's too much. You're
describing
Seamus.
Gold right now, Garrett, with the tone of disgust. I don't know what your problem is, but the birth of the Vision is awesome. Man, the big fight leading up to the whole building a vibranium body, that's making sense to me, villain-wise. James Spader, the absolute king of, like, weird, creepy, evil guy voice, is just killing it. The introduction of Wanda and the introduction and exit of Quicksilver, which definitely is cool later in WandaVision. Granted, I will agree that it's a lot of stepping stone things that they were, like, building up for Civil War, and, like, it's not the top of my list, but I went into it being like, oh yeah, this one again, and I was enthralled. I didn't remember much, and it was a lot of fun.
I feel like it's too long, and it feels like a movie where they were trying to set up as much stuff as they could, but didn't really have a plan for where they were going at the same time. Which is kind of, we talked about this during WandaVision. That's always been my whole problem with Wanda, is that she feels like a character that was introduced because she was supposed to feel important, but they didn't have an end game in mind for her. No pun intended.
Granted, I will say, when Hawkeye goes, "You're an Avenger now," I was just like, all right, whatever, dude. Like, whatever. But
I actually like that scene. That's one of the only scenes in that movie I really care for.
That made me roll my eyes just because she was so very easily entered into that. There's a little bit of whiplash with the Maximovs on what they're trying to do, and obviously helping a homicidal robot and then being surprised. That whatever. But picking up the hammer scene, I always love that.
Like that.
That's a lot of fun stuff there.
Everything in that movie just feels too spread thin for me and underdeveloped. Like, there's so much stuff in that movie that could have been really cool if you focused more on it. But, I mean, like, I'm not trying to just stomp all over your rec center, Seamus. I don't mean to...
Please, I'm fully aware that this movie has a ton of problems, but in my mind, just rewatching it with those incredibly low expectations, I was so pleasantly surprised that it's gotta be my unpopular opinion rec center that I think Diego is just gonna add to the list of things to make fun of me for, I think I just gotta be me, I gotta fly, Garrett.
Maybe I'll rewatch it sometime.
Your opinion will not change, I don't think. Because you're very right in a lot of it. I'm just a sucker for the rise of the machines, and Paul Bettany is absolutely lovely as Vision, so I gotta give it to it.
Paul Bettany's a wonderful man.
Yeah, Garrett, what do you got this week?
I actually have a on-topic documentary to recommend, Seamus.
Oh.
I'm coming in hot with the Apple TV original Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry.
Oh, I didn't even know there was a Apple TV thing. Explain, Garrett.
I don't think it was shot for Apple TV. I think it was just a doc that Apple TV bought the distribution rights to.
Okay.
But I think it starts when Billie Eilish is like 16, but it's basically tracking her rise through stardom that a documentary crew has been following her for years. And I am daunted to think how much footage they had. The movie itself is 2.5 hours, so it's...
Oh my god.
It's a long watch, but it is not your standard, like, concert, film, puff piece, pop documentary. It is a really stark look at being a young person who is famous, and how do you parent a young person that is famous? How do you help them cope with that? Also, it's very clear that Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas had a very unconventional upbringing that both helped prepare them for the fame that they're now experiencing at young ages, but also maybe led to them having some different world outlooks that are detrimental. It's just a really interesting insight to what goes into making this, renowned teen pop sensation, and also actually is really relevant to, I think, the messaging that's going to be coming out right now and soon with the new album, because a big piece of that film, which only came out at the end of February, is her relationship with the rapper guy that this new album's about. So I think it's also, worth noting that it's kind of on brand narratively for where Billie Eilish is as an artist, and I don't think that's probably too much of a coincidence.
Damn, I'm gonna have to check this one out, man. I think having that window into the upbringing and kind of the early stages of her teen fame would be an absolute trip to watch right before, like you said, this album about her kind of burgeoning into a new chapter of her career and her life. I think that's definitely really interesting. I might...
Seamus, I've got an Apple TV login for you. Also, it's only $5 a month, and they have a lot of really good programming. I actually recommend it quite a bit.
Ooh, stay tuned for our annual Battle of the Streaming Services update. Alright, I'm going to watch this Eilish documentary and Ted Lasso, and then Apple's going to shoot up to the top spot.
Well, I think that wraps us up for this week's episode of Pop Culture Reference. Closed out news and the episode with Billie Eilish talk, and I can only imagine we're going to be talking more about her in the next few months.
Yeah, I can't wait. She's always doing something very interesting, so no complaints here.
If you want to reach the show, you can tweet us at PCR_podcast. Find us on Instagram at that same handle. You can email us at popculturereferencepod@gmail.com. You can like us on Facebook. Please let us know what you think about the Warrens, like we were talking about today. Are you excited for more Conjuring films? Do you think that the real-life origin of the subject matter of these films is in poor taste, or are you able to turn your brain off enough for it to just be a movie? Let us know what you think. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Disney Plus original series, Loki. The first episode is going to be dropping, and Seamus, are you excited to be back to our weekly Disney Plus recaps?
I am thrilled, Garrett. we do have a name for our new Loki segment. We've got that teed up. I'm very excited.
I can't wait to talk about it. Owen Wilson, he's going to be there. It's going to be great.
Over under on number of episodes it takes for him to say wow? What do you think?
I think his character seems to know a lot about stuff.
Oh yeah, not a lot is going to surprise him.
But
maybe they'll save it to the finale?
He seems kind of smarmy, though. So maybe when Loki's like, do you know who I am? He's going to be like, oh wow, you're the god of mischief? Wow, that's great.
Ooh, yeah. That could be fun. Oh, I'm very much looking forward to it, man. I can't wait.
Join us next week, folks. Until then, we're out.
Adios, amigos.